Fauteux is a registered nutritional therapist with over 18 years of experience as a personal trainer, nutrition counselor, and coach. Bridget has dedicated her life to transforming bodies and minds. Please welcome Bridget Fauteux.
Everyone, thank you so much for attending today's session and being here with me. This is a hot topic. I'm sure as many of you know, my intention today is to guide you to optimize your client's health by clearing up any misconceptions about seed oils and delivering the facts for you today. So quickly, Cassandra gave us a great intro here. I'm just going to go over a little bit more about myself, former strength and conditioning coach. My background was in neuroscience, biochem, moved into nutrition counseling, so I combine the psychology of eating with nutritional sciences. I've been in the 19 years this year in the fitness industry, just trying to make it to that 20. Oh my God. And I started my own business 9 years ago called Fit Nutrition Canada. And I focus a lot on preventing disordered eating in the fitness industry. And a big part of that is myth busting. That's kind of what I'm known for. You can find me. My Instagram handle is Fit Nutrition Canada 1. Do not follow my old account, Fit Nutrition Canada. Otherwise, you will get asked to buy into Bitcoin or something. So just don't do that. Add the 1 at the end. If you would like to, you can feel free to subscribe to my website. Keep in touch with me. I send out myth-busting blogs, free meal plans for specialized nutrition needs, and nutrition science updates in both Canada and the US because I am qualified in the US as well, which is exciting times right now. All right, so today's outline, let's get into it. I want to recap everything. I'm going to fast track you in the world of fats and nutrition. Then we'll dive into a little bit more detail about what seed oils are. Then we're going to hit the myths versus facts. So I kept this performance related, things that are most likely to impact your client's health concerns, potentially their body composition, their energy, and I did an intake on my social medias and said, okay, everybody, what are your most popular things you're hearing about? And let's bust some myths today. I like to leave a lot of time at the end to get to know you and do Q&A. So I'm going to hold all questions. Feel free to throw them in the chat, but I will answer them all at the end. If I don't have time, I mentioned to Cassandra, if there's an abundance of questions, I will email you after if we, for some reason, don't have time. But let's dive in. So let's get started with some general facts about fats. So fats are absolutely essential for energy, cell function, and nutrient absorption. If you remember, A, D, E, and K are our fat-soluble vitamins. And so we need fats to absorb those vitamins, prevent vitamin D deficiency, et cetera, et cetera. When we talk about cell function, I find I get a lot of confusion about that. It seems pretty general. So specifically, we need fats for the phospholipid bilayer, which is the cell membrane. We need it for our skin health, growth of cells, immune function. So that means immune function would mean how quickly we respond to an infection. So how fast that signaling happens and how quickly we can get rid of that infection, as well as neuromuscular, nerve insulation. So specifically the myelin sheath. So how fast does the brain conduct down to the muscles? Now we have 3 different types: saturated, unsaturated, and trans. Saturated are solid at room temperature. These are typically our animal fats. Think bacon or, ribeye steak. Our unsaturated break into 2 main groups: monounsaturated fats and polyunsaturated fats. And then our trans fats are the ones that are a hell no. Okay, these are the ones you absolutely need to limit from your diet. We have federal regulations that demand that make companies get rid of trans fats in our anything that is processed, right? So seed oils fall into the category of polyunsaturated fats. These are rich in omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acids, and they have more than 1 double bond. So monounsaturated fats have 1 double bond, poly, 2 or more. All right. These are considered essential, and essential meaning that the body cannot produce them on their own. So we need to be getting them from our diet. When we consume mono or polyunsaturated fats, they are emulsified by bile salts and digestive enzymes like pancreatic lipase, exciting things for me, you don't need to know this much detail, in the small intestine. Then they are broken down through a process called beta oxidation to be used as energy as a backup energy or stored as triglycerides in adipose tissue. Okay. One thing to know throughout this presentation, or one thing to kind of keep in the back of your mind, is that a monounsaturated fat is more stable in the body. So this is because when we break it down, that double bond is the first place that the enzymes will go to cleave that into smaller chunks. So if you only have one, it's going to leave two large pieces. If you have more than one, it'll chop it up really quick. Okay, so what this means with a lot of seed oil things being polyunsaturated fats is that it's up to a lot of scrutiny on social media about what does that look like. And we'll get into why that's important later. So to give you an idea of monounsaturated fats, these are like olives, olive oil, avocados, almonds, cashews, peanuts, and peanut oil. In polyunsaturated fats, some of these are seed oils like sunflower, corn, soybean. We have other ones like pumpkin seeds, flax seeds, chia seeds, hemp seeds, fatty fish, and walnuts. So even though that is an animal, it contains some saturated fats, but also polyunsaturated fats. Okay. Overall, what you need to know, big takeaway from this slide, unsaturated fats are beneficial. All right. The recommended intake for adults. All right, I'm working under the assumption that most of you are working with adults. So the regular adult intake is 20 to 35% of your overall daily intake of calories. And this hasn't changed for many, 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 many years, and it probably won't change for many, 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 many years. Now remember, there are 9 calories per gram. This means it adds up quicker than proteins and carbohydrates. So on a standard loose 2,000 kilocalorie diet, that would be about 44 to 77 grams per day. So not a lot. Another important takeaway that you're going to need to know, and something that you hopefully should be sharing with your clients if you are doing any nutrient assessments with them, is that saturated fat should always stay less than 10% of the overall amount of calories. So if you have a client who's approximately around 2,000 kilocalories a day, that's only 22 grams. It's not a lot. And we need this to be lower than 10% to reduce our overall health risks. Higher than 10%, we start to increase our risk of, well, not just obesity, cardiovascular disease, osteoarthritis, osteoporosis, cancer, all of the big mammajamas, okay? So let's dive in a little bit deeper into these polyunsaturated fats, seed oils specifically, what we're all here for. So seed oils are basically extracted from plants, specifically canola, soybean, sunflower, flax, and corn are the most common. And the reason why we see so much of this, and I think why this is such like a hot topic right now, is because they are so commonly used, especially in processed foods and cooking. And there are 4 really good reasons why. One is that it has a neutral flavor. Anyone who's ever worked back of house in a restaurant, you want to be as neutral as possible to enhance the flavor of what you're putting out in your restaurant. Has very high smoking points, mean it doesn't burn, right? If you've ever thrown olive oil in a pan to cook something and it gets too high, you know that's going to start to smoke. It's very cost effective. We're able to produce a lot of it with very little. And that's really important for manufacturing. And as well as a bottom line, if you did own a restaurant, as well as having a long shelf life. So also bottom line. Now, a lot of the times we can use these at home in our kitchens, but you know, that's why I have this slide here, because these are the main culprits of where seed oils will be the highest. All right. Yes, we use them at home, but we get to have control over how much we're putting in our food at home. So the main culprits, if a client is concerned and comes to you and says, okay, I'm kind of worried about like my seed oil intake, the first thing you're going to do is say, all right, are you getting deep fried foods? And if so, where are they from? I want to see your nutrition and then see if you're getting, you know, where are your baked goods at? What are the serving sizes? Let me see, are you consuming too many processed snacks, ultra processed snacks? And are you dining out often, restaurant and takeout meals? If you have a client who travels a lot, you know, that may genuinely be a concern for them. So if you do happen to be deep frying at home or something like that, or making many baked goods, the serving size is going to be paramount here for your clients. Because if you remember from a few slides back, 44 to 77 grams on a 2,000 calorie diet. Now that adds up quick. If you were deep frying something at home, you're getting 10 to 15 grams extra. If you're deep frying something that is already fatty, if you're doing chicken wings, all right, so you already have the saturated fats inside the chicken wing as well, and then you add on another 5 to 10 that have been absorbed, that is going to add up very, very quickly. In terms of baked goods, again, you're looking at 5 to 15 grams, but if a client said, oh, I only had 3 cookies, but a serving size is 1 cookie, there can be 15 grams right there or more, 15 to what, 45? Very quickly. In restaurants, you're looking at dressings, sauces, marinades. They typically use like soybean and canola oil. And even something like a salad with toppings with the dressing on the side can, rack up about 20 grams or more. All right. Now, your main takeaway from this conversation is that if you have a client who's concerned, this is the first direction I would be looking at. Okay. If you are concerned about seed oils, this is where they're really coming from in the highest amounts. So, Bridge, how much fat is in one fast food meal? You may or may not be asking yourself, but I get this question a lot. So, if you had a client who, say, had a pretty healthful diet all around, and they were trying to decide, preferences aside, pretend they don't have preferences, they're not on a specific diet or anything like that, and they said, oh my gosh, I'm concerned. Should I have just the cheeseburger meal or should I have this chicken stir fry with veggies and noodles? If all of their nutrition information were exactly the same, which is like healthier or better for performance? Now, the reason why I bring this to your attention in the context of seed oils is because you have one, the cheeseburger meal has a mix of 3 different types of fats. You have animal-based, dairy-based, and seed oils. Total is 55, and your seed oils is 20 or less, give or take. All right. Versus a chicken stir fry with veggies and noodles, your client may be concerned to go, that's a lot of seed oils. That's like almost 35 grams, 20 to 35 grams, right? So we're going to come back to this at the end of the presentation, but keep it in your mind, what would you be recommending at this point in time? What is the bigger concern? Is it overall fats? Is it mix of fats? Or is it too many seed oils? Okay. Now, let's get into the fun part. Let's go into some claims. So, Bridget, oh my God, look at this study. The polyunsaturated fats, they're so concerning. These mice, they're so inflamed. They have chronic inflammation. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Okay. Seed oils causing inflammation. Let's break it down. Now, don't write it. You don't need to know this chart exactly. This chart I am showing you because it highlights the specificity and detail of what is going on in a chronic inflammatory response. Chronic inflammation is a prolonged, dysregulated, and maladaptive immune response, and it can persist for weeks, months, or years. Unlike an acute inflammatory response, which is rapid and beneficial. Think injury, infection, or post-workout. When you really crush a workout, you have an acute inflammatory response. Now, chronic inflammation becomes problematic because the immune system fails to resolve the issue. In acute inflammation, okay, injury, infection, we heal it. Okay, post-workout, we get proteins, repair the muscle. Boom, problem solved. You go for your workout the next day. Okay, injury's moving on, infection is gone. And instead, in chronic inflammation, it begins to damage healthy tissue. So this is a very serious claim. This is very serious. So definitely concerning if like omega-6s from our polyunsaturated fats or seed oils are causing this. Now, I bring this to your attention because the studies are mixed, right? Studies, a lot of the times when they show this inflammatory response, it's acute inflammation, which does not translate to chronic inflammation. So let me show you some results that are actually consistent findings related to inflammation. So ultimately, the present findings from studies show no direct link between seed oil consumption and increased chronic inflammation. Findings support the idea that inflammation is driven by overall diet quality. So with your clients, you're going to be looking at overall diet quality. You're going to be looking at lifestyle. And contextually, the simple presence of seed oils like soybean, sunflower, or corn corn oil, for example, do not directly increase inflammation. Studies with longer follow-ups and really well-controlled variables actually failed to show that seed oils, and especially diets low in ultra-processed foods, act as standalone pro-inflammatory agents. Now, side note, we know that there is correlation between ultra-processed foods and inflammation, chronic inflammation. However, this is correlation. Correlation is not causation. This can also have a bidirectional effect, right? Is consuming the ultra-processed foods causing chronic inflammation, or do people with chronic inflammation also have other diseases and social determinants of health that make them rely on ultra-processed foods more? All right, so correlation is not causation. But I do want to mention that when you remove ultra-processed foods from the diet, we see that these seed oils are not causing inflammation. All right. Now, some animal studies, I want to address the animal studies that I've seen, come out. They've raised concerns that specifically omega-6 and getting too much omega-6, which is in seed oils, linoleic acid, it shows an increase in acute and chronic inflammation. We have not seen this in human studies. And quite frankly, it is very hard to ethically control a group of humans and say, we need you to consume this amount of fatty acids. Very, very, very unethical. The translation between how much they are giving mice of pure omega-6s would not translate to what we give to humans if we had to. So so overall, safflower, so all the seed oils, they don't elevate markers of systemic inflammation. That's like C-reactive protein, that's our interleukin-6 or tumor necrosis factor alpha. And in addition, some randomized controlled trials actually show the opposite. All right, so we are going to stop cease to add to the online discourse of linking seed oils with inflammation. The scientific consensus based off current evidence remains that seed oils do not independently trigger chronic inflammation when consumed as part of a balanced diet. Keywords for your client: balanced freaking diet. All right. So claim versus fact, seed oils lead to chronic inflammation. Very serious, very impactful claim here. That's like a whoa factor. And the research we don't have it to back that up. In fact, seed oils may actually reduce it. Now, again, imagine you're on the floor and client says something about seed oils. They're like, oh, I'm trying to remove seed oils. Listen, if you're trying to remove like fast foods and ultra processed foods, cool. Kudos to you. I wouldn't overly restrict because that will cause a cascade of psychological things. But one thing you can suggest to your clients is, why don't you aim for adding in a little bit more omega-3s? Add in 2 to 3 grams of ALA, so some chia, some flax, or some walnuts as a snack, or 500 to 1,000 milligrams of EPA DHA. So getting a fatty fish in your diet every few days, okay? Supplements is listed on here. However, before recommending any supplements, you got to do that disclaimer. They need to speak to their doctor because you never know what interaction supplements may take. All right. So instead of them being concerned about, oh my God, I have to remove omega-6 from diet, here's a great way: add in some 3s. Okay. Reduce that inflammation. Sound good? Good. On to the next one. Seed oils contain harmful chemicals. All right. So this is broken down into 2 different parts. When I hear this, I'm like, what chemicals? Like, what you talking about? And when they describe it to me a little bit more, or they send me the links, I see that it's coming from 2 different places. There is some confusion about like chemicals and what chemicals are, right? When you break down fatty acids in the body, there's a natural process. I'm not going to go too much into detail, but it's called beta oxidation. And this is a normal process. That's literally the cleaving of those fatty acids. So remember, I talked about mono, you're going to break it into 2 chunks, and polyunsaturated, you break it into a lot of little pieces. Okay. That's a normal process. That's what our body does. Now, you can speed up that process of beta oxidation by heating up oils to extremely high temperatures or prolonged exposure to light. So one of the chemicals that is produced from these things is an aldehyde, and there is some concern about toxic aldehydes in the body if you consume them. So this would be straight up rancid oil. If your oil goes bad, yeah, please don't consume it. There will be aldehydes in there, but aldehydes in the body are naturally broken down. So just some confusion about that. Want to clear that up. All right. The other thing that I hear about in terms of harmful chemicals is the actual processing. And so I'm going to show you a little bit about what that processing looks like. This is the scientific thing. Okay, there's the seed oil extraction or refining process. That's technical terms. Here's human English. I humanized it for us. So we go from cleaning the seeds, you do some gentle extraction. We got to remove the gum, all the sticky bits out of it. We balance some of the acids out, adjusting the seasoning, taking out any like weirdness in it. Then we filter it for clarity, make it look nice and golden and clean, so there's no like sediment or anything like that. Freshen the oil up to remove strong smells, and then safe bottling and storage. All right, less scary than the previous slide, and that's all it is at the end of the day. So there is some online discourse and some concern that this process produces harmful chemicals. It's actually quite the opposite. It's going to remove the toxic chemicals. So I already discussed the claims around omega-6 fat. These are different types of claims that I've heard that are in our oils. Like if you were to buy it from the grocery store and get it today. So omega-6 is, yes, that is in our oils, but it's misleading that it causes chronic inflammation. We just addressed that. Trans fats. This is absolutely BS. Like there's no trans fats in our oils in Canada. So just if you hear that, like block them. I don't know, block them to their face. Um, Maybe don't tell them I said that. We have oxidation products, and that's why I brought it up at the beginning. So oxidation products, this is the natural breakdown that happens in the body, but improper handling, yeah, you can cause aldehydes if you leave your oils out and they go rancid. So that claim can be true in very specific instances of way high heats that are actually almost impossible to cook at home, and rancid oil. Please don't eat anything that is literally gone bad. The last one is what I'm going to talk about right now, and that's hexane residues. So this one is actually like, yes, there is hexane in it, but it's not in it by the time it's produced. Hexane is a solvent, all right? So that means it gets dissolved inside quickly and then evaporates immediately. And what this does is it increases the yield. So going from X amount of processing and grinding into the pure oil. And what that does is it actually extracts more pure oil compared to the mechanical processing methods alone. Hexane, as a chemical itself, it evaporates really, really quickly at like 68 to 155 degrees Fahrenheit, which again is something that we are not going to do at home, but it makes it easy to remove completely from the oil. So after extraction, so in the process, hexane will be used through, but at the end, it has evaporated already at a relatively low temperature, as I said, and then it gets recycled, right? So this means that the same batch of hexane can be used repetitively as time goes on. There's no detectable residue in the final oil, making it very safe for consumption. It is less likely to go bad as well, making it more shelf stable. And the benefit environmentally is we're able to recycle the ingredients. So yay, environment as well. So if somebody brings up a concern about hexane, you could be like, false. That evaporates quickly during the extraction process, which I hope everybody is like going to remember at the end of this. So just remember, if somebody is concerned and your client says to you, oh, I'm concerned about the processing and the harmful ingredients in it, the refining process actually removes all the harmful solvents that are used in the processing, as well as the harmful ingredients that are in it in the beginning in the mechanical processing. Okay? Everybody good with that? Can I get a thumbs up if you're good with that one? Okay. All right. On to the next. How are we doing for time? Okay, we're all right. All right, next one. Seed oils are unnatural, therefore they are harmful. These oils weren't a part of our ancestral diets. Well, do I have some news for you? All right, humans have consumed seed oils for thousands of years. Extracting oil from seeds by pressing, crushing, grinding is a traditional natural process, and it's not inherently industrial or synthetic. In fact, sesame and flaxseed have been used in cooking and traditional medicine since ancient civilizations. Modern processing, well, some seed oils do use like chemical solvents like hexane, right? And honestly, and not even all seed oils, some seed oils use it. During the extraction process, the solvents are removed, as I just mentioned, and products are safe and regulated from harmful things. In fact, if you want to go the extra mile with your clients, if they are really, really, really concerned, you can say, okay, Linda, cold pressed or expeller pressed is something, if you can financially afford it, to invest a little bit more in. Think of it like the organic of oils. All right. Organic foods are not necessarily healthier, but if you feel better buying them, kudos to you. You can support the companies that decide to invest their time in organic farming. This is the same thing. So in cold press, they use mechanical pressure, which is a like more efficient form of the traditional methods. So that's a little pro tip if you have somebody who's genuinely just very concerned, very freaked out, advise them that way if that makes them feel better. But it is not like healthier. Seed oils, seed oils come from natural sources. So to say it's not natural, it's like one of the most natural processed ingredients that we have. They're extracted directly from plants, and we have selectively bred a lot of these plants over generations, similar to the fruits and vegetables that we have today. So like some other examples of selectively bred plants are apples and kale and carrots, and some of the foods we consider very healthy today. All right. The last one, processed doesn't equal harmful or natural. So labeling seed oils as unnatural solely because they're processed is definitely misleading, and it really ignores the broader food context. In addition to that, nearly all foods in our farmers markets, grocery stores, grocers undergo some level of processing. Washing, cooking, milling, pasteurization, fermenting, pressing, selectively bred, pesticides. There's some level of processing. So we need to let go of processing equals bad. All right, that is definitely a myth here today. This is very important. The labeling of seed oils as unnatural solely because they're processed is what we call an appeal to nature fallacy. So this is something that kind of, what we mean by this is it's a cognitive bias. This is something that all of our brains do. Our brains develop these what we call heuristics, and they're like shortcuts. Oh, natural means better, right? Unnatural means bad, right? Our brain really likes those things, but oftentimes they can fail us. All right. So we have to do a little extra work to be critical thinkers and think to ourselves, is this a bias? Am I being biased right now? And when you see the word natural or unnatural and you relate that to good or bad, that is called the appeal to nature fallacy. All right. This incorrectly assumes that anything natural is automatically safe and anything processed is harmful. The irony of this is that seed oils directly come from natural plants. So using the methods that are derived from traditional processing techniques, of course. I want you to consider that there are plenty of entirely natural substances out there in the world, like snake venom or poisonous mushrooms, that are harmful. And many processed substances like purified water are beneficial and safe. All right. So the bottom line here is that natural doesn't automatically mean healthy, and processed doesn't necessarily mean harmful. All right. So recommendation for your clients is to pay attention, and for ourselves, right? We're prone to this as well, but paying attention to our cognitive biases and when we actually may be falling for this fallacy. So this may be something that you want to share with your clients and have them pay attention to help them see through the BS of things on the internet. Okay, claim 4. Let's get moving. Seed oils contribute to heart disease. This is a big one. That's bold. That's a bold statement. But Bridget, it seems to make sense because you even said earlier, these polyunsaturated fats, they're broken down, they're chopped up into triglycerides. And we know that when we see higher triglycerides on our biomarkers, that can contribute to heart disease. That's got to be right, right? Well, here we go. Linoleic acid, specifically omega-6 polyunsaturated fats. That's what we're going to focus on here today because that is the hot button issue, right? It's important to know that most studies in humans and animal controls will see a decrease in health risks like CVD with omega-6s. But here's a but, and it is a big but. This is as part of a low saturated fat, low cholesterol diet. So for reference, the intake of omega-6s in these low saturated, low cholesterol diets were approximately 5 to 10% of the overall intake. So basically, what all this fancy research says is that the World Health Organization, the FDA in the States, and the Canadian Dietitians of Canada, the typical old-fashioned, no smoking, no drinking, minimum exercise guidelines, balanced diet, boom, when you hit all those, the omega-6s are effing irrelevant to cardiovascular disease. Most studies, like as I mentioned earlier, if you can't like ethically control for exact amounts of controlling somebody's food intake. So when all of these reviews that I have listed, as meta-analysis, the Cochrane and American Heart Association, they removed when you're doing a system, like when you're doing research, you start to remove studies. Okay, these were self-reporting or these were observational, so we can't really count those. So this was done on an animal study. You're left with the best understanding of the polyunsaturated fats as possible. All right, so that's what all of these studies have in common. So the big take-home message here is we got bigger issues with heart disease. All right. A client, if they were coming to you saying, hey, I have a concern about heart risk and I'm concerned about their omega-6s. You're going to go through those beginning slides. Okay, where are you getting restaurant foods from? Where are you getting deep fried foods from? Are you consuming too many baked goods? Okay, yes. But then also go to the first set of guidelines. No smoking, no drinking, minimum exercise guidelines, balanced diet. All right, that's what you need to be taking home. Reminder too, that the overall intake of fats in somebody's diet is around 20 to 35% of daily intake, and saturated fats has to be less than 10%. I'm imagining everybody just going like, yes, less than 10%. Definitely, Bridge, I got it. All right, so here's definitely a recommendation that can be made to your clients to improve their overall health. You can recommend for them, when you look at their nutrition plans, to replace saturated fats with seed oils that can help reduce the risk. Now, I'm not saying replace your saturated fats with restaurant chicken wings or, just start gulping down some seed oils. All right. It still has to be within the recommended amount. But if you replace it gram for gram with those saturated fats with seed oils, you're going to see a huge decrease in somebody who is concerned about heart disease. All right. And then, of course, all the other things like don't smoke and recommended daily intake of calories and exercise. Okay. So that one was a banger. This one is a very serious accusation on our poor seed oils here. And you can just be replacing more saturated fats with seed oils to help them reduce their risk. All right, what about cancer? Bridget, the oxidation. I've seen these studies about oxidation and it increases cancer. Well, here we go again. Healthy diet typically includes a balance of omega-3s to omega-6s. All right. Your body needs both. Remember, they are essential. You have to be getting them from the diet. Our body just can't like magically produce these. So we need to be getting them from the diet, but you need a good balance of both, which is why earlier I recommended, yeah, try and add in 2 to 3 grams per day of some chia seeds or hemp seeds and have some fatty fish every few days, right? This is going to help with brain health, immune function, all the other fun stuff I mentioned earlier. But here's the thing about the cancer is that decades of research have yielded nothing but like mixed and inconclusive results as a total. So we have never uncovered any biological mechanism tying specifically omega-6s to cancers. All right. Omega-3s in general have been shown to be very productive. And in some, see, this is where you have mixed research. In some animal studies, we see omega-6s linked to increased cancer risk. But that is very difficult to translate. I'll use an example of, say, aspartame. Okay. We know that aspartame is safe in general amounts. when we see these studies about aspartame increasing risks and we translate the amount that they gave to mice to what would that look like in humans, well, you'd have to consume 167 Diet Cokes in one day over the course of 1 month. Yeah, then that might be dangerous. Okay, there's the limit. All right, now I know how much less Diet Coke to drink. Less 166 and less. All right. So the translation is very, very difficult. We will need more research as time goes on, but here's a big problem. Translating this to the standard North American diet, the standard North American diet gets 14 to 25 times more omega-6 fatty acids than omega-3s. So that's why in general, we can pretty safely add in a few omega-3 rich foods into somebody's diet, as well as replacing our saturated fats, because that we know that those carry a huge risk. All right. But we do need more human studies. Who knows? In 10 years, I might be like, you have to keep your polyunsaturated fats less than 15%, the same way we know this about saturated fats. But until then, they're pretty okay. There's no conclusive evidence. Here are some bonus informations to take bonus info to take to your clients. All right, we do know of specific foods that will increase cancer risk. Hands down, no doubt about it. If you consume alcohol, if you are smoking, and if you consume processed meats, you are increasing your risk for cancer. 100%. That is, we know this. So if a client is concerned about seed oils, you can go, well, like, let's look at your overall fats and we'll have a look at that. But here are 3 things that we know definitely do. All right. The other thing is that if you have clients who are supplementing with omega-6s, they may not be needed. As I just mentioned, most of our diet, we're getting way more than what we normally need. If that is a result of North American diet being more hyper palatable and more ultra processed, probably some, but overall, they probably don't need an omega-6 supplementation, which is why they should talk to their doctor about it. Another kind of like safe bet is the Mediterranean diet, which is shown to have a good balance of omega-3 to 6s. All right. So some recommendations for you. That's what you're here for, right? I hope so. Oh my God, but wait, there's more. Okay, I want to go over this really quickly. This is like a fun bonus round. More fun for me, but maybe a little fun for you. Let's talk about seed oils causing hormonal imbalances. I want to take you through today how to detect BS on the internet. All right. So we're going to use this as an example, and I'm going to take you through how to evaluate, is this scientifically correct? I just gave you answers to the last 5. I'm going to show you how to do this. And hopefully you can take some of this information, maybe start to apply it a little bit with your clients as well. So when you start to encounter claims like seed oils cause hormonal imbalances, these are the questions you need to ask. And I would ask them to yourself in this order. So this is something you might want to jot down because I don't think this is really like taught in any necessarily like courses. So this is some pretty cool stuff. So the first thing you want to do is you want to get specific. In this example, what hormones? Like, what are we talking about? What specifically are we claiming to be affected? And are the hormones clearly named? Insulin, cortisol, estrogen, testosterone, etc. The next thing is you need those measurements, baby. You need to know the measurement methods. How were these measured? Were they through blood tests, biomarkers, clinical markers, saliva tests, guessing game? Did they roll a dice? I don't know. Are the measurements standardized? Are they validated? Are they acceptable? I wouldn't accept a dice rolling or like, I feel like my estrogen is up. That's not really acceptable. We need to know something a little bit more valid than that. The next thing is you're going to look at the population. So as I mentioned earlier, like my example of the aspartame from mice to humans, what population is studied? Is it humans, animals, or just cells? That's me pipetting, by the way, if you're like, what the hell is that? That's a pipetting. And is the studied population comparable to general human diet and lifestyle? The next is the dose and context. All right. How much of the substance, how much of seed oils were consumed, and is this realistic for dietary intake, or is it like overly exaggerated? Now, most non-scientists can probably stop around here. You've probably gotten your answer if something is BS by now. If you're still not sure, you can take these extra 4 steps, but these are a little bit more science-based. I put them in here to be transparent with you, but you would probably, most of us would stop at about number 4 and number 5. And number 5 is the design quality. So if you don't know, randomized control trials, reviews, and meta-analysis are our best type of qualities. You might want to look up the hierarchy of research if you're interested in this. And we would also look if the study is peer-reviewed. Mechanism plausibility, is this scientifically plausible, or are you doing mental gymnastics here? Independent replication, which basically means, has this been redone? Has the scientific study been redone and redone and redone and found the exact same thing over and over and over again? All right, that will help support or reject the claim. And lastly, consensus for experts. I mean, you could always jump to this because we have specific scientific organizations and health bodies that will tell you, like Dietitians of Canada, World Health Organization, FDA, and they will say publicly if they support or reject claims. So you can always fast track to there as well. So in our seed oil claim, these are the answers right here. So when we look at these studies, they're often vaguely described. Hormones, cortisol. Cortisol is a diurnal hormone. It's highest in the morning and lowest in its evening. That would mean that somebody would have to be taking 2 blood tests a day over a course of extended weeks. I don't even think I've seen a study of that done before. Measurement methods, sorry, I got ahead of myself. It's rarely specified. There's no real standard of doing like a cortisol testing. Even saliva testing has a lot of, it's not very valid. Let's put it that way. Our population, mostly animal studies. Dose, super unrealistic. It far exceeds any normal dietary patterns. Our study qualities and hormonal balances in these claims, they're mostly observational, right? Oh, and observational is at best correlational, because a lot of those are self-reporting. And in self-reporting, there's a huge bias, right, from the individual. So that's what randomized controlled trials try to do, is remove any biases by not letting the patients or the participants know what they're looking for. The mechanism is hypothetical and lacks supportive evidence. Replication, minimal, inconsistent at best. And the overall consensus is that major nutrition guidelines and expert panels reject the claim because it's unconvincing, as you can see. Okay, so if somebody's concerned about seed oils and their hormones, you can just say no substantial evidence supports that. Sorry. But if something's going on with hormones, then refer them out to doctor, endocrinologist, and at least get their blood panel done and see what's going on from there. Okay, but it's probably not seed oils. All right. So let's wrap up. Now that you know about overall dietary patterns, you know about the ratios of 3 to 6s and how valuable 3s are and how we're already getting more than 6s, and like I try to go over as much as possible. If this was your client, and like I said, all of their factors were even, they had a pretty healthful diet overall, which of these meals would you influence them to choose, assuming they both, like, they didn't have a preference, right? Now we would know very, very clearly, we would probably go with the chicken stir fry. In fact, you could even ask them as a restaurant to use light oil. That would be even better. The reason being is that we know if we replace saturated fats with seed oils, there will be more benefit to their long-term health, right? We're also comparing the overall fat. Overall fat is still the number one factor. That's our biggest dietary pattern. And 55 grams in a cheeseburger meal, whew, that's pretty much your entire day's worth of fat if you're on a 2,000 calorie diet. You have what? Less than 20, you have 20 grams more in your day. That's not a lot. In addition, you have 17 grams of fat. You have 20 grams of fat from animal-based saturated fat. That's your entire day's worth. That's very, very, very risky, right? We want to minimize our saturated fats as much as possible. All right, now let's say that a preference for cheeseburger, you'd be like, okay, let's try low cheese, like let's try and add in some extra veggies, like let's try and do a smaller serving of fries. Of course, there's all of those nutrition hacks in general, but oil for oil, gram for gram, in this particular meal, the chicken stir fry would be in their best interest. They don't have to fear the seed oils. Okay, so remember, encourage replacing saturated fats with unsaturated. Use oils at home moderately in a balanced diet, but super healthful to be adding in some omega-3s during their day. Limit deep fried, hyper-palatable, ultra-processed foods. That should not be surprising to anybody. That's something that's consistent throughout our entire lives. The reason being the next one, saturated fats less than 10%. If you have one thing to take home from today, boom, make sure your clients are doing that, because that will increase the risk of different cancers and heart disease. And teach clients to think critically about what they see on social media. So using that scientific kind of protocol I took you through of what to think about, what to ask yourself, as well as the appeal to nature fallacy, which is what I see all the time with this claim. So here's our conclusion. Keep your nutrition realistic and flexible, but definitely science-backed with your clients. We want to stay away from fear-based messaging. We know that clinical trials are neutral or beneficial from seed oils on inflammation markers, as well as cancer and heart disease, and overall diet matters most. We good? All right, let's open it up for some Q&A. And don't forget to follow me too. Little shameless plug there. How are we doing?
Perfect. So we did get some questions, so I'll ask them now. Also, if you guys have any other questions that you'd like, you could put them in the chat so Bridget can answer them. So the first one for palm oil, the question was, what about palm oil? Because that has become predominant in processed food. So this was referenced back to one of the earlier ones. So just talking about how it's become predominant in processed food.
Yeah. I mean, palm oil, I mean, I guess it would depend on the context, right? If your client is asking about palm oil, kind of the same, you're going to take them through the same protocol, right? And this could be for any specific type of oil. Where are your overall fats coming from, first and foremost? Are you saturated as low as possible? Once you pass kind of those two things, it would be a lot about preferences. Palm oil is a very neutral oil. Using it at home, you don't see like as often, but in processing, it still goes through the same extraction process. I guess my question would be like, is there something specific about the palm oil that you're concerned about? It it's processed and extracted very similarly to all of the other oils that we have, right? So it is a safe alternative. I would go through the first two protocol. Where are the overall fats? Where are your saturated fats? And then go from there if your client is concerned about it.
Perfect, thank you. Our next question is, I'm a vegan. Many vegan milks have seed oil. Should I give up my oat milk?
Nah, well, I mean, okay, should I if you were my client, I would look at your overall diet first, right? That one, with your oat milk is having like a really hot moment right now. Take a look and see where your overall fats are, and that's what food labels are for. And it's ironic, I did my presentation with CamFit last summer on food labels. Remember, food labels are designed for one thing and one thing only. It's to make a decision between two products. So if you are comparing oat milk to almond milk, right, you're going to make the best choice for you based off that. If one is higher in fats and you're getting fats from elsewhere in your day, feel free to go with that one. If you're looking at calories and you're looking for a lower calorie option, then choose which one has lower calories. If you're not getting enough B12 and one is supplemented with B12 as a vegan, that would be hugely important. I mean, I would be basing a lot of my milk choices off if it's fortified with B12 or not for my vegan clients. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend anybody to give something up without knowing about what they're doing. But remember, I would take it back to the nutrition labels and remember what those are there for and make a decision based off of that. Did I answer that question correctly? Was oat milk, right?
Yeah.
Should I give up oat milk? Okay.
Yeah, you good?
Yeah.
The next one, I'd like to know about the emulsifiers in plant milk. Not sure if that's a seed oil question.
Yeah, no, it's more of a food science and processing question. Emulsifiers, I mean, if we didn't have emulsifiers, you'd be drinking chunky milk and raw milk. Like the emulsifiers are they are negligible. Like they're helpful. And then a lot of them, because by the time they're processed and they're in the milk, yeah, it's not having an impact on overall dietary anything or any health concerns. Carrageenan, I know, had like a moment where everybody was freaked out about it, which it's based off of a seaweed. So again, it's coming from another natural source. So you know, there's no evidence that it like increases, like the evidence that I've seen where it's like, oh, it like increases cancer or like something like that. Again, they're done in like animal studies and it doesn't translate to the general human population, unfortunately. I mean, no, that is fortunate. That's not, it's just like what I see online in terms of the evidence that like people are presenting. It doesn't translate, right? One thing I would be looking at, if you have any questions about specific ingredients in food, look at where the evidence is coming from. And I wish I had a picture for you right now. And look at the Google, you can do it really quickly right now, even look at the hierarchy of research. Okay, so it's literally a triangle. And at the top, you have standardized guidelines. And at the bottom, you have anecdotal evidence and animal studies, right? So, and then every step up along the way produces better and better and better research. So we can't translate something that we find in an animal study or an observational study to what actually affects the human body, right? And that's why I went over that one slide right here of like how to evaluate, right? If it says, oh, it increases, can't this ingredient increases like cardiovascular disease or whatever else. Okay, what form of that ingredient, how much, right? How is this measured? Look at the population, Kate's animal studies, how's that compared to humans? The dose and context, is it realistic, right? And then the study design quality. And you already know if it's like, and a lot of that like ingredient scary stuff is all animal studies, almost all of it. So it doesn't really translate to randomized controlled trials because how do you control for the entire diet, right? Doesn't work that way. So I went off on a tangent. I told you, Cassandra, that that's what happens when I get talking about science.
No, you're perfect. The more information, the better, for
Okay,
sure.
great. So that's about, yeah, that's about emulsifiers. You know, if you have a more specific concern, like is there a specific emulsifier you're worried about? You know, if it's in our food, it's already passed a hell of a lot of safety protocols. I wish more people were aware of the food safety and like what goes into it. But you can always message me if you have like a more specific question about it.
Perfect, for sure. And we're definitely gonna put your, I think it was your Instagram you said, we'll put that in the chat
Yeah,
later. So
definitely.
if you guys have any other questions as well.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
Another question, suggestions on which seed oil is the best. Do any have any additional nutritional benefits?
Oh, that's a really curious question. So you know what? Yes. Flax oil. So the reason I mentioned flax oil is because it has a very high omega-3 content. One thing I like to recommend to my clients who are really like, if they have a very healthful diet, we're going to take them to that next. Like, we're really like actual optimization. Like, a lot of us use that word optimization of nutrition, and it's like, oh, like, just please don't drink alcohol. Like, no, I'm talking about like optimizing somebody who's really doing a lot and they want to like get even better. I do recommend flax oil, but because flax seed oil will degrade quicker, again, polyunsaturated, you don't use it for cooking, but I would use like drizzle it on fresh veggies, right? Something like that, or even fruits. It's a very neutral flavor. And that's an increase in your omega-3. So if remember how I said the 2 to 3 grams from like chia or hemp, if you're looking for a seed oil to use, flax oil would be great. It's usually refrigerated in grocery stores. So you would have sometimes like, you know, in superstores, something like that, they have like the health sections, or other times, you're gonna have to hunt it down, but it's refrigerated. It wouldn't because it's not shelf stable. It has to stay in your fridge. So that's my recommendation for that.
Perfect. I think maybe if you could elaborate a little bit more on the oat milk topic. We just have some more questions about should I give up my oat milk? Should I give up my vegan Starbucks venti oat milk lattes
Oh,
over seed
oh
oils?
no, everybody. Okay, should you listen, I can't without knowing you, without you being a client, I can't give you advice on what to eat and what not to eat. I mean, what if you had some wild like health concern and me telling you to change it like caused a cascade of problems, right? So speak to your healthcare providers or come see me if you're actually concerned about a specific drink. In general, oat milk, again, do a dietary intake with yourselves. We're all fitness professionals. Most of us can do this without being too triggered. Do an intake, write down everything you're eating in a day, or get a free subscription to MyFitnessPal for a day and just write it in there. If you see that your oat milk is for whatever reason putting you over the edge of your overall fats, then yeah, maybe pull it back to a skim milk. Okay. The reason I recommend skim milk, and except for my vegan out there who's asking, vegan, sorry. Um, the reason I just recommend skim milk is because it does have a little bit more protein. It's fortified with vitamin D, and that makes it better fat soluble as well. So the vitamin D in it gets absorbed better. Vitamin D deficiency is very common across Canada. That's why I bring it up, assuming most of us are within the country. And it could be lower in overall calories and fat content. All right. If you're swapping it for something that's almost the same, like oat milk for almond milk, and almond milk doesn't have the seed oils, then that's going to be a personal judgment call. Do you prefer one flavor to another? Does one have more calories and are you on a caloric deficit? Does one have, is one fortified or one isn't? So those are the questions that go through my mind when saying giving up oat milk. In general, like, no, I mean, do you really love oat milk? Then don't. If you don't love it, then swap to something that you do enjoy. There's also preference goes a long way. Oat milk isn't inherently healthier than, say, another plant-based milk like almond milk or coconut milk has more saturated, I'm sorry, it does have more fats in it. But again, say my vegan out there, a lot of times vegans from not getting very much saturated fats, their overall fat can be sometimes even lower than 20% of their overall calories. That might be a healthy swap for them, is to go, oh, I'm actually swapping my oat milk for coconut milk because I'm not getting enough fats, overall fats. So again, very individualized here. I can't really tell somebody what they should or should not do without like signing something that says like I can give them advice. So does that make sense? Are you guys picking up what I'm laying down here?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
For
Okay.
sure. Um, so aside from the awesome information here, do you have any other specific sources we should consult with to learn more about coaching, about clients or seed oil concerns? Like anywhere, do you have any recommendations
Yeah,
further?
so some great recommendations. A lot of hospitals have released statements, like major hospital research hospitals, so like Mount Sinai in the States is a great one. American Heart Association, the Canadian dietitians, I mean, they're on the ball. If you go to Health Canada's website, most of the research that I referenced here as well, they publicly announce, right? Like I would be following, get updates, subscribe to Health Canada, right? This way you get the updates. They will release a statement because Health Canada works in combination with the public. Right? The same way the FDA in the States works in combination with their public. I'm sure most of us have seen that red food diets have been banned. That's not because they're inherently unhealthy. It's because of public pushback. So if you have concerns, you can email Health Canada. It's like, and the amount of concerns that come rolling in, they will address a public statement, or if there is public pushback, they make changes, right? That's how we get the cool. When I did my presentation on food labeling, this was one of the kind of surprises that a lot of people didn't realize was that the reason that we have like these keto labels, right, on food or organic labels isn't because they're inherently healthy, but it's because public wanted to know, is this safe for somebody who is following a keto diet? Is this organic? I would like to purchase only organic. So can you please make it publicly known? Health Canada is really great at working with the public. So I would definitely bare tush minimum get subscribe and find out that research directly from the source. And World Health Organization, of course. I mean, you can't really email World Health Organization, but another great follow.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really good to know. I didn't even know that we could message the Health Canada and get that information. I didn't even know that they would change it based off of what the society wants.
Oh, absolutely. We work in tandem. right? Because this is the public part of public health, is taking into consideration what the public's needs are. There's also they put out lots of great surveys, great things. I mean, as a parent, what are childhood nutrition? What are your concerns? We changed the labeling a few years ago so that the front of packaging, and I'm sure you're really seeing it now, the front of packaging has a high in, and it will be highlighted saturated fats, sugar, or whatever else, just to make it easier. You don't even need to flip it around anymore. It's right on the front of label packaging. And that was because of these public surveys that were put out. But what are you having trouble with the labels? Like, how can we make Canadians healthier at the end of the day? So that's a really good resource. Of course, find local dietitians in your area. Make sure you have a great referral network. As a trainer, you should be able to refer clients out when in doubt. And yeah,
Yeah, amazing.
I'm like, I think I'll stop there before I go any longer.
No, perfect. I think that was all the questions. Does anyone else have any other questions that they want answered? I think we went through most of them. We'll just give it a minute to see if anyone has any other questions.
Let's see, let me pull up the chat. It's kind of, oh, I see now. Oh, I see one here. What about soy milk? Yeah, so soy is a great plant-based option, especially for vegans. The old soy increases estrogen has been busted so many times, so many times. The amount of soy you would have to consume for there to be an estrogen like backlash is like unbelievably high. I don't have the numbers right now, but it is unbelievably high. It's like comparable to that aspartame one, which I keep going back to because that happened to be on hand. So soy milk is a great protein-rich option too, especially for people who are plant-based. So lots of benefits with soy milk, especially for my vegans or anybody who just wants to be a little bit more plant-based. And any particular other than flaxseed? Well, flaxseed is kind of like the top of the line, like only because it has such a high amount of the omega-3s in terms of actual oils. All the rest of the seed oils are pretty comparable. Canola, sunflower, they have different burning points and they might have subtle differences in flavor, but they're still 9 calories per gram at the end of the day, even the flax oil, right? So if you have a client who is on a slight caloric deficit, say, of course, you're going to look at their overall fats, but if oil is sneaking up from even the most fantastic oil in the world, it can still increase their calories, right? Which, if that is a concern for them, definitely.
Perfect. Topical use of seed oils. I've heard pumpkin seed oil is good for hair. Would you know anything about that?
Uh, Pumpkin seed. I wonder what ingredient in pumpkin seed would. Okay, so overall, I mean, when you consume oils and polyunsaturated fats, they definitely have a benefit of uh, hair production, right, as well. That's why people on low fat diets, they can like lose hair, right? It's not like a direct causation thing. You know what? I will do some digging and see if there's something specific about pumpkin oil. I've read a lot of good research about like using retinol before an oil, and retinol is a derivative of vitamin A, right? And you need fats. Vitamin A is a fat soluble vitamin. So I know that having a healthy amount of fats in your diet can help with the absorption of those fat soluble vitamins, and your retinol can work even better for skin, hair, nails in that case. So, yeah, I'll see if get back to me on that one if there's a specific, but that's again, you're going this scientific validity. What specifically about pumpkin seeds would do it, right?
Perfect. Oh, this question. Should all seed oils be kept refrigerated?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily, but you can, I mean, like, am I in the habit of refrigerating most of my oils? Yeah. Like, just because also to think about the proximity of like what your kitchen looks like. Do you have a dark cupboard that's away, like further away from your oven? Like where I would keep my oil is pretty close to my oven, right? So just that natural heat coming up from it, I err on the side of caution and put most of it in the fridge. It doesn't need to be, but it will extend the life. Depends on how fast you go through it too, right? So that's more personal dependent. It doesn't have to. It's not a food safety like deal breaker.
Yeah, for sure. I think going back to what you were just talking about for soy, Marika said, but soy is so sprayed, most pesticide-ridden products, unless it's organic. I've avoided it based on that.
No, again, like going through specifics, right? Like eh, organic actually, organic is worse for the environment if we're looking at it at a per land issue. Because what happens is you're still using pesticides in organic, just not as much. And you use more water intake to keep the land free from bugs, right? So the pesticide use in soy, I don't know where that, I've never heard that before, where it's more than something else because it has to be standardized, right? Pesticide use is 100% standardized. So there are specific amounts that are used in specific measurements, and we use the most minimal amount based on the insect population, right? Then afterwards, in the extraction process, a lot of that, essentially all of it is removed before you can do that. So again, this is going to depend on dose and really the context here is that you know, if pet this the I think the argument is like, are pesticides safe or unsafe? They're removed by the time they're mostly removed by the time they come to you. There might still be some. That's why we err on the side of caution in food safety. Okay, we're going to wash our veggies before we consume them. But in theory, the food safety is so heavily standardized that if you took a bite of an apple in the grocery store, you're not going to have any side effects from pesticides. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
actually, you know what? It's funny because pesticides is a very common myth, and I might spend some time this week busting that again because it's been a while. That's a good one.
Perfect. I think those are all the questions. If there's anything else, I think we've got all of them. Is there anything else you want to add, Bridget? Or
No, like from my end, you know, feel free to contact me if you think of any questions later. If you bring this information, I mean, I hope you bring some of this information back to your clients. If you do hear any other myths, always try and like get them to me. Um, Always try and get them back to me as soon as possible. And I will definitely take some time to talk about any myth busting. You know, don't forget that your overall client's diet quality matters like most. And so that's what you definitely need to be focusing on.
perfect.
I
Okay, well,
did not say pesticide. No, wait 1 second. I did not say pesticides are okay to ingest. I just saw this comment. I did not
nice.
say that. I said by the time they arrive in your grocer, they have been all but removed. And that's it. So did not go around, just for context, I did not tell somebody it's okay to consume pesticides.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Bridget, for